What if Anakin started his own Jedi civil war? Let's explore the depths of this scenario in the video. The holographic recording flickers to life in the center of the Jedi Council chamber, casting an eerie blue glow across the ancient stone walls. Anakin Skywalker stands frozen in the ghostly light, his mechanical hand intertwined with Padme Amidala's delicate fingers as they exchange wedding vows beneath the twin suns of Tatooine. The image wavers slightly from the recording device's age, but every word is crystal clear, every emotion painfully evident on their young faces. The ceremony is small, intimate, witnessed only by C-3PO and R2-D2 in the shadow of the Lars homestead. The silence in the council chamber is deafening as the recording ends, leaving only the soft electronic hum of the projector and the distant sounds of Coruscant traffic filtering through the massive windows. 12 of the galaxy's most powerful Jedi sit in their traditional circle, their faces masks of stone and disappointment. The evidence before them is undeniable, captured by a security droid that had been investigating smuggling operations on Tatooine and inadvertently recorded the secret ceremony. Master Windu's dark features harden into an expression of barely controlled anger as he studies the young man standing defiantly in the center of their circle. Beside him, Yoda's ancient green ears droop with profound disappointment, his 900-year-old eyes reflecting the weight of this betrayal. Ki-Adi-Mundi shakes his elongated head slowly, his serene features twisted with disbelief, while Shakti's blue and white montrals seem to darken with sorrow. The chamber itself seems to hold its breath. These walls have witnessed the rise and fall of countless Jedi over millennia, but never has the Order faced such a fundamental challenge to its core beliefs from within. The ancient Jedi Code, carved into the very foundation stones of this temple, suddenly feels fragile in the face of one young man's defiance. Skywalker. Mace begins, his deep voice cutting through the silence like a vibro blade through durasteel. Each word is measured, controlled, carrying the full weight of the Council's authority. You have violated the most sacred tenets of our Order. Secret marriage, forbidden attachment, deliberate deception, spanning months of service. These are not mere infractions, but fundamental betrayals of everything we stand for. Anakin stands tall in the center of the chamber, his blue eyes blazing with an inner fire that seems to burn brighter with each passing moment. The uncertain, eager to please young man who once stood before them seeking guidance is gone, replaced by someone who has made his choice and refuses to show even a hint of remorse. His mechanical hand clenches and unclenches at his side, the servo motors whirring softly in the tense silence. "I love her," he says simply, his voice carrying clearly across the chamber, despite its quiet tone. The words land like thermal detonators among the assembled masters. "And I won't pretend otherwise to satisfy your ancient rules." Master Coleman Trebor shifts uncomfortably in his seat, his scaled features reflecting uncertainty. "Anakin, surely you understand the wisdom behind these teachings. The Jedi Code has guided our Order for over 25,000 years. Has it?" Anakin's voice rises, his composure beginning to crack as weeks of suppressed frustration pour out. "Then explain the Clone Wars to me, Master Trebor. Explain how 25,000 years of wisdom led us to become generals in an army of slaves, fighting a war that grows more pointless with each passing day." The council members exchanged troubled glances. The war has indeed tested many of their fundamental beliefs, forcing them into roles they never intended to fill. Master Plo Koon's mechanical breathing apparatus hisses softly as he considers his response. The war is a necessary burden, Plo states carefully. We fight to preserve the Republic, to protect the innocent from separatist aggression, do we? Anakin's mechanical hand gestures toward the great windows overlooking Coruscant's sprawling cityscape. Look out there, masters. Look at the families torn apart by this war. The poverty in the lower levels, the corruption in the Senate. Tell me how our participation in this conflict serves the greater good. Ki Adi Mundi leans forward, his voice taking on the patient tone of a teacher addressing a particularly stubborn student. You speak of corruption and suffering as if they are new phenomena, young Skywalker. The galaxy has always known darkness. Our role is not to eliminate all suffering, but to serve as guardians of peace and justice within the framework of the Republic. Framework? Anakin's laugh is bitter, devoid of humor. You mean the same framework that allows slavery to continue on Outer Rim worlds while we debate Senate procedure. The same framework that creates clone soldiers without their consent and expects us to lead them to die for a cause they never chose. The mention of slavery strikes deep. Several council members know of Anakin's past on Tatooine. His mother's death at the hands of Tusken Raiders. His own decade of bondage before Qui-Gon Jinn freed him. Master Adi Gallia's expression softens slightly as she recognizes the pain behind his words. Your experiences have given you a unique perspective on suffering, she acknowledges gently. But they have also clouded your judgment. Personal pain cannot be allowed to override our duty to the greater good. Greater good? Anakin's voice cracks with emotion. My mother died while I was here, learning to suppress my feelings, to ignore my attachments. I could have saved her if I hadn't been following your teachings about not forming connections. How is that the greater good? Yoda taps his Geimer stick against the stone floor, the sound echoing through the chamber like a judge's gavel. When he speaks, his ancient voice carries the weight of centuries of accumulated wisdom and sorrow. Led you astray, your emotions have, young Skywalker. Difficult the path of the Jedi is, but necessary. Our sacrifices are. Without discipline, without detachment, fall to the dark side we will. Seen it. I have too many times in my long life, and I've seen what your detachment creates. Anakin counters, his voice growing stronger with conviction. Jedi, who care more about following rules than helping people. Masters who would rather debate philosophy than take action against injustice. An order so afraid of feeling that it's forgotten how to truly serve. The accusation hangs in the air like smoke from a battlefield. Several masters shift uncomfortably, recognizing uncomfortable truths. In his words, the war has indeed forced many of them to question long-held beliefs, to make compromises they never thought they would accept. Master Saci Tien speaks for the first time, his alien features unreadable. Your passion is admirable, Skywalker, but passion without discipline leads to chaos. The Sith draw their power from unchecked emotion. Would you have us follow that path? I would have us follow our hearts as well as our minds, Anakin replies fiercely. The Force flows through all living things, through their loves and fears and hopes. How can we serve it properly? while denying half of what makes us alive. Mace Windu rises from his seat, his imposing presence filling the chamber as he delivers what amounts to an ultimatum. His voice carries the full authority of the council, each word carefully chosen to emphasize the gravity of the moment. Enough philosophy. You have broken the code, Skywalker, and now you must face the consequences. The council offers you two choices, and two choices only. He pauses, letting the weight of his words settle. You will publicly renounce this illegal marriage, undergo a ritual of detachment to sever all emotional bonds, and accept exile from Coruscant for 5 years to meditate on your failures under the guidance of Master Yoda on Dagobah. The first option hits Anakin like a physical blow, but Mace continues relentlessly. Or you will be formally expelled from the Jedi Order, stripped of your lightsaber and all privileges of rank. And Senator Amidala will be subjected to a memory modification to remove all traces of your relationship. The infection of attachment must be cleansed before it spreads to corrupt others. The words hit Anakin like a series of blaster bolts to the chest. His face goes pale, then flushed with rage as the full implications sink in. They're not just threatening to exile him. They're threatening to violate the mind of the woman he loves, to steal her memories and alter her very identity because they disapprove of their bond. You would violate her mind? His voice is barely controlled, each word dripping with outrage and disbelief. You would rape her thoughts, steal her memories, destroy who she is, because you disapprove of our love. Attachment is forbidden, Ki Adi Mundi states coldly, his serene features showing no trace of sympathy. The infection must be cleansed before it spreads to others. Senator Amidala's continued presence in your life represents a clear and present danger to your development as a Jedi, and potentially to the Order itself. She's not an infection! Anakin's voice echoes off the chamber walls, raw with anguish. She's the best person I've ever known! She fights for justice every day in the Senate, stands up for the oppressed, works to end this war through diplomacy. If anyone embodies Jedi ideals, it's her, not you. Shakti leans forward, her voice gentler than the others but no less firm. Anakin, you must understand that we take no pleasure in this choice. But the dark side feeds on attachment, on the fear of loss. Your marriage makes you vulnerable to manipulation, to corruption. We've seen what happens when Jedi allow their emotions to rule them. Have you? Anakin's laugh is harsh, bitter, because from where I stand, it looks like fear is already ruling this council. You're so afraid of feeling, so terrified of attachment, that you've become the very thing you claim to oppose. You've let fear drive you to consider mind rape as a viable solution to your problems. Something fundamental shifts in the chamber's atmosphere. The Masters sense it first. A tremor in the Force that speaks of approaching storm. Anakin's hand moves to his lightsaber hilt, not in threat, but as a gesture of finality, of a decision made. No, he says quietly, then louder, his voice carrying across the chamber with absolute conviction. No, I won't let you touch her. I won't let you dictate who I can love, what I can feel, or how I choose to serve the Force. If this is what the Jedi Order has become, then I want no part of it. Skywalker, Mace warns, his own hand moving toward his weapon as he senses the dangerous shift in the young man's demeanor. Do not make this worse than it already is. Stand down and accept the Council's judgment. But Anakin's lightsaber is already in his hand, its blue blade igniting with a snap hiss that seems to echo like thunder in the enclosed space. The weapon's glow casts dancing shadows on the walls, ancient murals depicting Jedi heroes, seeming to come alive in the flickering light. "It's already as bad as it can get," he says, his voice now deadly calm. "You claim to serve the light, but all I see is darkness. The darkness of dogma, of blind obedience, of hearts turned to stone by centuries of rigid doctrine. You've forgotten what it means to be human." The other council members rise as one, their own weapons humming to life in a symphony of colored light. The chamber fills with the glow of multiple lightsabers: purple, green, blue, yellow. For the first time in over 1,000 years, Jedi face Jedi in the sacred halls of their temple, weapons drawn in anger rather than training. "Stand down, Anakin." "Obi," one pleads from across the circle, his voice heavy with sorrow and desperation. The man who trained him from a boy, who fought beside him through countless battles, now stands with weapon ready to strike him down. "Please, my former Padawan, don't force us to do this. There has to be another way." Anakin's eyes meet his former master's across the circle, and for a moment, profound pain flickers across his youthful features. Of all the betrayals this day has brought, Obi-Wan's allegiance to the Council cuts deepest. The man who taught him to question, to think independently, now stands ready to enforce the very dogma they once privately criticized. "I'm sorry, Obi-Wan," Anakin says, genuine regret coloring his voice. "You taught me to stand up for what's right, to question authority when it becomes corrupt. I'm doing exactly what you taught me to do. But someone has to stand up to this tyranny. And if it means standing alone, so be it." The battle erupts in an instant of chaos and violence. Anakin moves like lightning given form, his blade a blue blur, as he parries simultaneous strikes from multiple opponents. Years of combat experience in the Clone Wars have honed his reflexes to superhuman levels, and his connection to the Force burns brighter than ever before. Fed by righteous anger and desperate love, he uses the Force to hurl the heavy stone chairs around the chamber's perimeter, creating obstacles and distractions as he fights his way toward the great windows. Master Fisto's aquamarine blade nearly takes his head, missing by mere centimeters as Anakin drops into a forward roll and comes up swinging. His counterstrike forces the Nautolan to leap backward, right into the path of a flying meditation stool. Ki-Adi-Mundi approaches from his left flank, his lightsaber technique precise and measured, each strike calculated to disable rather than kill. But Anakin's combat style has evolved far beyond anything his instructors remember from his Padawan days. The Clone Wars have taught him that sometimes survival requires abandoning classical forms in favor of brutal efficiency. Their blades meet in a shower of sparks, and for a moment, they're locked in a contest of strength and will. The Syrian Master's eyes widen as he realizes just how much power Anakin can channel through the Force when properly motivated. With a surge of telekinetic energy, Anakin breaks the blade lock and sends Ki-Adi-Mundi stumbling backward into Master Gallia. Mace Windu presses forward from across the chamber, his Varpad technique turning Anakin's own aggression against him in a deadly feedback loop. Their purple and blue blades weave complex patterns in the air, as master and former student engage in a duel that's part lightsaber combat, part philosophical debate conducted through the Force. You've fallen to the dark side. Mace growls through gritted teeth as their weapons lock again, bringing them face to face. I can feel your anger, your hatred of this council. No, Anakin replies, his voice surprisingly calm, despite the intensity of their duel. I don't hate you, Master Windu. I pity you. You've spent so long suppressing your humanity that you've forgotten what it feels like to truly care about something beyond your duty. The words strike deeper than any lightsaber could. Mace's technique wavers for just an instant, and Anakin exploits the opening to break free of the blade lock with a Force-enhanced backhand that sends the senior master reeling. But there are too many of them. And even Anakin's enhanced abilities can't overcome 12 of the galaxy's most skilled warriors simultaneously. Master Plo Koon's electric judgment crackles through the air, forcing Anakin to redirect his attention from Mace to deflect the stunning assault. In that moment of distraction, Shakti's blade nearly finds his ribs, stopped only by a desperate parry that leaves him overextended. Recognizing that he cannot win this fight through conventional means, Anakin reaches deep into the Force, drawing on reserves of power he didn't know he possessed. The air in the chamber suddenly becomes thick and charged, like the moments before a massive thunderstorm. Ancient artifacts on the chamber's walls begin to vibrate, and several of the council members pause, sensing something unprecedented building around them. With a sound like reality tearing, Anakin unleashes a massive force wave that sends every Jedi in the chamber flying backward into the walls. The ancient stone cracks under the impact, and several masters lose their grips on their weapons. In the chaos that follows, Anakin sprints toward the great window that overlooks Coruscant's endless cityscape. His lightsaber cuts through the transparent steel like it's made of paper, sending crystalline fragments cascading into the traffic lanes far below. Without hesitation, he leaps into the void, trusting the Force to guide him to safety among the streaming lanes of speeders and air taxis. Behind him in the ruined chamber, the surviving council members slowly pick themselves up from the rubble-strewn floor. Ancient tapestries hang in tatters. Meditation seats lie overturned and broken, and scorch marks from lightsaber strikes decorate walls that had remained unmarked for centuries. Begun. A civil war has, Yoda says, quietly, his ancient voice heavy with the weight of prophecy. The others turn to look at him, seeing in his expression a sadness that seems to encompass the accumulated sorrows of 9 centuries of life. For we see it. I should have. Blind we have become to our own failings. Master Windu wipes a trickle of blood from his lip where Anakin's blow had connected. He's dangerous, Master Yoda. More powerful than we realized, and now completely beyond our control. We need to issue a galaxy-wide warrant for his arrest before he can spread his poison to other Jedi. But Yoda shakes his head slowly, his Gaimer stick tapping against the broken stone with a sound like a funeral bell. Too late for that it is. Already begun. The damage has. Question our ways. Many Jedi will. Wonder if right young Skywalker is. Prevent that. We cannot. Through the shattered window, the distant sounds of Coruscant's traffic seem muffled, as if the city itself is holding its breath. The implications of what has just occurred will ripple outward like waves from a stone dropped in still water, touching every corner of the galaxy and changing everything they thought they knew about the Jedi Order. Within hours of his escape from the temple, Anakin makes his way through Coruscant's labyrinthine lower levels to a secure communication terminal he knows can't be monitored by Jedi surveillance systems. His message to Padme is brief, but urgent. "Meet me at our place. Everything has changed. We need to talk." Their secret apartment in the Republica 500 building has served as their sanctuary throughout their hidden marriage, a place where Senator Amidala can become simply Padme, and the hero with no fear can remember what it feels like to be human. The penthouse suite, officially rented under one of Padme's security aliases, offers both privacy and a spectacular view of the galactic capital's endless towers. When she arrives, still wearing the formal robes of her senatorial office, her face is a mask of barely controlled worry. The HoloNet news has been full of conflicting reports about an incident at the Jedi Temple, but official sources have released no details. The sight of Anakin, his Jedi robes torn and singed, his usually perfect hair disheveled, tells her everything she needs to know. "They know," she says simply, setting down her senatorial seal on the apartment's dining table with hands that tremble slightly. "About us. About the marriage. They had a recording," Anakin confirms, moving to the great window that looks out over Coruscant's glittering expanse. His reflection in the transparent steel shows a young man aged beyond his years by war and now by betrayal. "Security footage from our wedding on Tatooine. They offered me exile or..." He pauses, his jaw tightening with remembered rage. "Or they would erase your memories of our relationship." Padme's face goes pale, one hand instinctively moving to her throat, as if she can feel invisible fingers already probing her mind. "Memory modification? That's not therapy, that's mental rape. They would actually consider doing such a thing? They don't see you as a person," Anakin says bitterly, his mechanical hand clenching into a fist. "To them, you're an infection to be cured, a liability to be managed. They've become so obsessed with their precious code that they've forgotten basic decency." She joins him at the window, her smaller hand finding his human one and intertwining their fingers. The gesture is simple, natural, yet by Jedi law, it represents everything forbidden. "What did you tell them?" "I told them no. Then I fought my way out of the temple." His voice carries a mixture of pride and sorrow. 12 of the Council's finest couldn't stop me when I was fighting for you. For us. For the right to feel something real in this galaxy of lies and manipulation. Padme is quiet for a long moment, processing the magnitude of what he's telling her. Her brilliant political mind is already analyzing the implications, understanding that this moment represents a fundamental shift in galactic power structures. "The HoloNet will have the full story within hours," she says finally. "Your name, your reputation, everything we've tried to protect. The Council will spin this as a fallen Jedi consumed by attachment. Probably claim you've turned to the dark side." "Let them," Anakin replies with quiet intensity. "I'm done caring what they think. But I won't let them paint me as some rogue Sith when all I did was refuse to abandon the woman I love. The galaxy deserves to hear the truth." She turns to face him fully, her brown eyes reflecting the city lights like stars. "What are you thinking, Ani?" "I'm thinking it's time someone challenged their authority publicly," he says, his voice growing stronger with conviction. "Time someone pointed out that an order that forbids love while commanding armies might not be the moral authority it claims to be." The next morning, Anakin stands on the grand steps of the Senate building, facing an enormous crowd of journalists, citizens, and curious onlookers. The news of his dramatic escape from the Jedi Temple has spread like wildfire across the HoloNet, and speculation runs rampant about what really happened in that ancient chamber. Behind him, the towering spires of the Republic's governmental heart stretch toward the sky, symbols of democracy and representation that now seem fragile in the face of galactic war. Senators from 100 worlds watch from viewing platforms and office windows, their own political calculations running as they try to assess how this unprecedented crisis might affect their positions. Anakin has traded his torn Jedi robes for simple civilian clothes, a dark tunic, and pants that make him look more like a young professor than a warrior. But the lightsaber at his side and the confidence in his bearing mark him unmistakably as someone accustomed to command, to making life and death decisions under pressure. "Citizens of the Republic," he begins, his voice carrying clearly across the plaza through strategically placed amplifiers. "I stand before you today not as a Jedi Knight, but as someone who has seen the truth behind the Order's carefully maintained facade." A murmur runs through the crowd. Cameras focus on his face, broadcasting his image to billions of beings across thousands of worlds. This is unprecedented. A Jedi, especially one of Anakin's fame and reputation, publicly criticizing the Order that trained him. "For 3 years, I have served as a general in this war, leading clone troopers into battle against separatist forces. I have seen good men die for causes they didn't choose, watched worlds burn while politicians debate, witnessed suffering that could have been prevented if those in power cared more about justice than procedure." His voice rises, passion evident in every word. "But yesterday, I learned that the Jedi Order's failings run deeper than I ever imagined. They have become so obsessed with their ancient rules, so terrified of human emotion, that they have lost sight of what it means to serve the greater good." A journalist shouts a question from the crowd. "General Skywalker, are the reports true that you've been expelled from the Jedi Order?" "I was given a choice," Anakin replies, his mechanical hand clenching at his side. "Abandon everything that makes me human, or watch them violate the mind of an innocent woman whose only crime was loving me. I chose a third option. I walked away from an institution that has forgotten its purpose." The crowd erupts in shocked murmurs. Marriage is forbidden to Jedi, but most citizens had assumed this was merely a matter of discipline, not a rule enforced through mental manipulation. Another voice calls out, "Who is this woman? What right did the council have to threaten her?" Anakin takes a deep breath, knowing that his next words will change everything for both of them. "Senator Padme Amidala of Naboo is my wife. We were married 2 years ago on Tatooine, witnessed by droids because we knew the Jedi Order would never allow such happiness to exist within their ranks." The revelation sends shockwaves through the assembled crowd and across the galaxy. Senator Amidala is one of the Republic's most respected political figures, known for her tireless work on behalf of displaced populations and her efforts to find diplomatic solutions to the war. The idea that the Jedi would consider memory modification against such a prominent figure is almost unthinkable. "For too long," Anakin continues, his voice growing stronger, "the Jedi have claimed to serve peace and justice while embracing the darkness of dogma. They forbid love while commanding soldiers. They preach compassion while showing none to those who think differently. They speak of serving the Force while serving only their own rigid interpretation of its will." He raises his lightsaber, its blue blade igniting in the afternoon sun like a beacon of defiance. "I call for the formation of a new order, one that embraces the full spectrum of the Force, that understands emotion and passion, can serve the light just as surely as cold detachment. We will be the Jedi this galaxy needs, not the Jedi the Council wants us to be." The crowd's reaction is immediate and polarized. Some cheer, caught up in his passion and convinced by his obvious sincerity. Others boo, loyal to the traditional order and suspicious of any Jedi who would break such fundamental vows. But everyone is paying attention, and that's exactly what Anakin intended. "The Force flows through all living things," he declares, his lightsaber casting blue highlights on his determined features. "Through their loves and fears, their hopes and dreams, their bonds with family and friends. An order that denies these connections denies half of what the Force truly is." As he speaks, his words are being broadcast across the galaxy, reaching Jedi on distant battlefields and in remote temples. The reaction is immediate and varied. Some denounce him as a fallen knight consumed by the dark side, but others find themselves nodding in agreement with criticisms they've harbored privately for years. The news of Anakin's public denunciation spreads across the HoloNet like wildfire, reaching every corner of the galaxy within hours. In command centers and medical tents, aboard starships traveling through hyperspace, and in cantinas on forgotten rim worlds, beings pause in their daily activities to watch the unprecedented sight of a Jedi Knight publicly challenging the order that raised him. The immediate reaction from the Jedi Temple is swift and predictable. Grand Master Yoda, speaking from the council chambers that still bear scorch marks from the previous day's confrontation, issues a formal statement denouncing Anakin's fall to the dark side and urging all Jedi to maintain their faith in the Order's ancient wisdom. But the damage has already been done. Across the galaxy, Jedi Knights and Masters find themselves confronting questions they've buried for years, doubts they've suppressed in service to institutional loyalty. The Clone Wars have tested many of their fundamental beliefs, forcing them into roles they never trained for and demanding compromises that seem to contradict everything they were taught about Jedi principles. On the outer rim world of Ryloth, Jedi Knight Isla Secura stands in the command center of a Republic staging area, watching Anakin's speech on a portable holoprojector, while her clone troopers pretend not to listen. The blue-skinned Twi'lek has always been considered one of the more orthodox members of her generation, a model of Jedi discipline and adherence to the code. But as she listens to Anakin's words, she finds herself remembering conversations with her own master, Quinlan Vos, about the increasing militarization of their order. She thinks of the clone troopers under her command, genetically engineered humans created without their consent and trained from birth to follow orders without question. Is this really so different from the slavery that Anakin experienced on Tatooine? Commander Bly approaches cautiously, his scarred features showing the effects of 2 years of continuous warfare. "General, what are your orders regarding General Skywalker's announcement?" Ayla is quiet for a long moment, her blue-skinned fingers drumming against the tactical display table. The question cuts to the heart of a dilemma she's been wrestling with since the war began. How much autonomy should individual Jedi have when their actions conflict with official policy? "I've always questioned some of the Council's decisions," she admits, quietly, her voice barely audible over the hum of electronic equipment. The war has forced us to make compromises I never thought I'd accept. Perhaps it's time for change, real change, not just adaptation to circumstances. Similar scenes play out across dozens of worlds as Jedi commanders grapple with the implications of Anakin's revelation. On Kashyyyk, Master Luminara Unduli finds herself defending Anakin's right to love to her own Padawan, Barriss Offee, whose faith in the Order has been shaken by witnessing the war's brutalities firsthand. "But Master," Barriss argues, her usually gentle voice edged with uncertainty, "if attachment is truly forbidden, how can we form the bonds necessary to fight effectively alongside our troops? How can we care enough about the people we're protecting to risk our lives for them?" Luminara has no easy answer. The traditional response about compassion without attachment seems hollow when she thinks of her own relationship with Barriss, or the clone commanders who have saved her life more times than she can count. The war has made philosophers of them all, whether they wanted to be or not. On Felucia, where the humid jungle air makes every breath an effort and the indigenous plants seem to pulse with dark side energy, Master Plo Koon receives an urgent communication from the temple just as his forces prepare for another assault on separatist positions. The holographic image of Mace Windu flickers in the command tent, distorted by atmospheric interference. "Master Koon, I trust you've received our communication about the Skywalker situation." Windu's voice crackles through the transmission. "The Council needs absolute loyalty from all field commanders during this crisis. Any expression of support for his rebellion will be considered treason against the Order." Plo's breathing apparatus hisses softly as he considers his response. Behind his protective goggles, his ancient eyes reflect decades of service to the Jedi Code. But he also thinks of Anakin, the young man he helped train, whose passion and dedication saved countless lives during the war's darkest moments. "I will do my duty to the Force," he replies carefully, his words chosen to avoid direct commitment to either side. "As I always have." It's Ahsoka Tano's reaction that truly shakes the foundations of both emerging factions. The former Padawan, who left the Order after being falsely accused of terrorism and nearly executed for crimes she didn't commit, watches Anakin's speech from the lower levels of Coruscant, where she has been working with refugees and displaced populations. Tears stream down her blue and white marked face as she listens to her former master speak about institutional corruption and the price of blind obedience. Her own experience with the Council's rush to judgment, their willingness to believe the worst about her without investigation, suddenly takes on new meaning in the context of Anakin's rebellion. The small apartment where she's been staying is sparse, furnished only with salvaged furniture and basic necessities. But the walls are covered with hollow images of people she's helped. Refugee families reunited, medical supplies delivered to plague-stricken worlds, children rescued from the war's devastation. This is what Jedi work should look like, she believes. Not the grand gestures and political maneuvering that have come to define the Order's war effort. "He's right," she whispers to herself, her voice breaking with emotion. "They never understood him. They never understood any of us." Within days, she has made contact with Anakin through intermediaries, their reunion taking place in an abandoned warehouse in Coruscant's industrial sector. The meeting is emotional and tense, filled with the weight of everything that has passed between them and everything that has been lost. "I never stopped believing in you, Sky Guy," Ahsoka says, using his old nickname, as they embrace in the warehouse's shadowy interior. Even when the council turned against me, even when I thought I'd lost everything, I knew you were still the person who taught me what it really means to be a Jedi. And I never stopped believing that you were right to leave when you did. Anakin replies, his voice thick with emotion. You saw their true nature before any of us. You recognized that sometimes the most Jedi thing you can do is walk away from the Jedi. Together, they begin reaching out to other disillusioned members of the Order, using secure communication channels and trusted intermediaries to identify potential allies. The response is surprising in its scope and diversity. Younger knights who grew up during the war and never knew the peacetime order their masters remember. Older masters who remember when the Jedi were counselors and peacekeepers rather than generals and warriors. Even some Padawans who slip away from their training temples in the middle of the night, drawn by promises of an order that won't require them to choose between duty and humanity. Master Quinlan Vos is among the first to openly declare his support for Anakin's reformed order. His decision sending shockwaves through the intelligence networks he spent years cultivating. The Maverick Jedi's reputation for unconventional methods and willingness to bend rules makes him a natural ally. But his decision carries particular weight because of his close relationship with several council members. Standing in the ruins of a separatist listening post on the world of Kifex, Vos records a message that will be broadcast across rebel communication networks within hours. His scarred face shows the effects of years of undercover work, but his voice carries absolute conviction. I've spent this war pretending to be a criminal, a murderer, a traitor to everything I was taught to value, he says, staring directly into the camera. I've killed in cold blood, betrayed allies, committed acts that would have gotten me expelled from the Order if anyone knew about them. All in service to a greater good that seems to recede further into the distance with each passing day. He pauses, running a hand through his long, unkempt hair. Anakin Skywalker has done something I never had the courage to do. He's told the truth about what we've become. The Jedi Order I joined 20 years ago doesn't exist anymore. It died in the first battle of Geonosis, replaced by something harder and colder and infinitely more cruel. Maybe it's time to build something better from the ashes. The political ramifications are immediate and severe. The Galactic Senate, already divided along countless factional lines, finds itself facing a crisis that threatens to shatter the Republic's remaining unity. Senator Amidala, now revealed as Anakin's wife, becomes a lightning rod for controversy as some call for her resignation while others rally to her defense. The session chamber buzzes with tension as senators from hundreds of worlds debate emergency measures to address the growing schism within the Jedi Order. Chancellor Palpatine, outwardly concerned but privately delighted by the chaos, calls for calm, while quietly encouraging the very divisions that threaten to tear the Republic apart. This crisis threatens the very foundations of our democracy. Palpatine declares from the Supreme Chancellor's podium, his voice carrying across the vast chamber with practiced authority. The Jedi Order has served as guardians of peace and justice for over 1,000 generations. We cannot allow the misguided actions of one fallen knight to undermine that sacred trust. But his words ring hollow to many who have witnessed the war's progression and the increasing authoritarianism of both the Senate and the Jedi Council. Senator Bail Organa of Alderaan rises to speak, his dignified bearing commanding respect even from his political opponents. With respect, Chancellor, perhaps the actions of General Skywalker are not misguided but necessary, Organa states, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems. When institutions become so rigid that they cannot adapt to changing circumstances, when they prioritize orthodoxy over justice, then challenges to their authority become acts of patriotism rather than rebellion. The chamber erupts in competing voices as senators shout their agreement or disagreement with Organa's assessment. Some systems begin declaring their support for Anakin's reformed Jedi movement, while others reaffirm their loyalty to the traditional order. The Republic, already strained by 3 years of devastating war, begins to fracture along ideological lines that have little to do with the original separatist conflict. Mon Mothma of Chandrila, her voice calm but firm, addresses the growing chaos with characteristic directness. We cannot ignore the fundamental questions that General Skywalker has raised about accountability and oversight. The Jedi Order operates with broad autonomy within our government structure, but autonomy without accountability is just another word for tyranny. Her words strike at the heart of concerns that many senators have harbored privately for years. The war has given the Jedi unprecedented power and authority, but with little external oversight or review of their decisions. Clone troopers die by the thousands following Jedi commands. Yet, there is no formal mechanism for questioning those orders or holding commanders accountable for their consequences. Senator Ask Ak of Malastare, his 3 eyes reflecting the chamber's bright lights, speaks with barely controlled anger. The Jedi have failed us repeatedly throughout this war. Their intelligence is flawed, their strategies ineffective, their leadership questionable. Perhaps it is time we reconsidered whether they deserve the trust we have placed in them. The debate continues for hours, revealing fault lines that run much deeper than simple disagreement about Jedi orthodoxy. Core worlds clash with rim territories over resource allocation. Military hawks argue with diplomatic doves about war strategy. Corporate interests promote policies that benefit their sectors, while humanitarian senators fight for refugee aid and medical supplies. But underlying all these familiar conflicts is a new tension. The growing recognition that the Republic they're fighting to preserve may not be worth saving in its current form. The emergency powers granted to Chancellor Palpatine, the militarization of civilian government, the acceptance of clone slavery as a necessary evil. All of these compromises have eroded the democratic ideals that supposedly justify their struggle against separatist secession. Senator Padme Amidala finally takes the floor late in the evening session, her appearance drawing immediate attention from every corner of the chamber. She has maintained her dignity throughout the day despite the personal attacks and implications about her corruption by Jedi influence. But now, her patience has clearly reached its limit. "Honorable senators," she begins, her voice carrying the accumulated authority of years of distinguished service. "I have listened to accusations about my character, my loyalty, and my fitness for office. I have heard colleagues question whether love itself can coexist with public service. And I find myself wondering whether we have lost sight of what we're fighting for in this war." She pauses, her brown eyes scanning the assembled representatives with unflinching directness. "My husband broke no law of the Republic by marrying me." He violated only the internal regulations of an organization that has never been subject to external oversight or democratic accountability. The fact that we are treating this as a crisis of galactic proportions says more about our priorities than about his character. Murmurs ripple through the chamber, some supportive, others hostile. But Padme continues with growing passion, her voice rising to carry over the noise. I have worked alongside Jedi for years, both before and during this war. I have seen their dedication, their sacrifice, their genuine desire to serve the greater good. But I have also seen their inflexibility, their unwillingness to question their own assumptions, their tendency to treat dissent as heresy. If we cannot acknowledge these flaws and work to address them, then we are no better than the separatists we claim to oppose. Her speech becomes a rallying cry for those who believe that the Republic needs fundamental reform rather than simple military victory. Systems that have felt marginalized by core world dominance begin to see Anakin's rebellion as part of a larger movement toward democratic renewal and institutional accountability. But for every system that rallies to the reformist cause, another declares its unwavering support for the traditional order and its methods. The galaxy begins to divide into competing camps, each claiming to represent the true ideals of the Republic, while denouncing their opponents as traitors or fools. The first real violence erupts on the world of Christophsis, where Republic forces loyal to competing Jedi factions encounter each other during what should have been a routine supply operation. The Crystal Planet's strategic location at the intersection of major hyperspace routes has made it a crucial staging area for military operations, but now it becomes a battleground where former allies turn weapons on each other. Commander Rex, his loyalty to Anakin outweighing his programmed obedience to Jedi authority in general, leads elements of the 501st Legion in support of the Reformed movement. His decision carries enormous symbolic weight, as clone commanders across the galaxy struggle with competing loyalties and contradictory orders. Standing before his assembled troopers in a makeshift briefing room carved from Christophsis' crystal formations, Rex removes his distinctive helmet and speaks with an authority that comes from years of battlefield experience rather than genetic programming. "We swore an oath to protect the Republic and its people," he tells the gathered soldiers, his scarred features reflecting the rainbow light of the crystal walls. Not to any particular group of Jedi, not to any specific interpretation of their code, but to the ideals they claim to represent. General Skywalker has shown us that those ideals might be bigger than any one organization. His words resonate with clone troopers who have served under Anakin's command, who have seen his willingness to risk his own life for theirs, his genuine concern for their welfare as individuals rather than expendable resources. But they also create a schism within the Grand Army of the Republic that mirrors the larger conflict tearing at galactic society. Captain Fordo of the ARC Troopers remains loyal to the traditional order, his faith in institutional authority unshaken by questions about individual commanders. "Orders are orders," he tells his own men as they prepare for what everyone knows will be an inevitable confrontation. "We don't get to pick and choose which ones we follow based on personal feelings. The battle, when it comes, is devastating in ways that go far beyond simple casualties. These are not strangers fighting, but brothers who have trained together, served together, bled together, in defense of Republic worlds. Every exchange of fire is a betrayal of bonds forged in combat. Every fallen trooper, a symbol of how completely the war has corrupted everything it has touched." Master Ima Gundi leads traditional order forces with the calm precision that has made him legendary among clone commanders, but even his tactical brilliance cannot overcome the pain of fighting against troops he once served alongside. His blue lightsaber deflects blaster bolts back toward their sources, but he takes no pleasure in the necessity of combat against Republic forces. Ahsoka commands reformed Jedi with passionate intensity, her twin lightsabers weaving patterns of defense and counterattack that keep her troops alive against overwhelming odds. But the anguish in her expression is visible even through the chaos of battle. The weight of fighting former allies clearly taking its toll on her emotional state. The crystal formations that give Christophsis its distinctive character become both weapon and liability, as Force users on both sides manipulate the environment to their advantage. Massive crystal spears erupt from the ground to block advancing troops, while precisely targeted Force pushes send razor-sharp formations crashing down on enemy positions above the planet. Space combat rages between Republic vessels whose crews find themselves divided by loyalty and conviction. Admiral Yularen, commanding the Star Destroyer Resolute, faces an impossible choice when confronted by ships he once served alongside. Now flying under the banner of Anakin's reformed movement, the sight of Republic turbolasers firing on Republic shields shocks even hardened veterans who have witnessed the war's worst atrocities. Clone pilots who learned to fly together at Camino now target each other's fighters. Their training and brotherhood perverted into instruments of civil conflict. But the true tragedy of Christophsis becomes clear when separatist forces under Count Dooku arrive to exploit the chaos, launching a massive assault on both Republic factions, while they're distracted by their internal conflict. Suddenly, the philosophical debate about Jedi orthodoxy becomes irrelevant in the face of battle droids advancing through crystal valleys and Confederate starfighters strafing Republic positions without discrimination. The irony is not lost on anyone. While the heirs of the Republic tear each other apart over questions of doctrine and authority, their true enemies prepare to claim victory by default. The sight of vulture droids strafing both traditional and reformed positions finally breaks through the paralysis that has gripped both factions. It's Ahsoka who first reaches out across battle lines, her Force-enhanced voice carrying over the sounds of combat to reach Imagundi's position. "Master Dai, we need to work together or we'll all die here." The older Jedi's response comes not in words but in action, as his forces shift their fire to target the advancing droid army rather than their Republic opponents. Within minutes, traditional and reformed Jedi are fighting side by side against their common enemy, their tactical coordination demonstrating how effective they could be if they weren't divided by institutional politics. The battle becomes a crucible that burns away some of the artificial divisions that have separated the factions. Faced with immediate threats and shared dangers, individual Jedi rediscover the bonds that unite them rather than the doctrines that divide them. Clone troopers find themselves fighting to protect brothers who had been enemies moments before, their genetic loyalty to each other overriding their programmed obedience to competing authorities. But even as they achieve tactical victory against the separatist assault, the larger questions raised by Anakin's rebellion remain unresolved. Too much blood has been shed, too many bridges burned, for simple reconciliation to heal the wounds that have opened within the Republic's heart. Master Obi-Wan Kenobi arrives at Christophsis aboard a medical frigate converted for refugee transport. His mission officially humanitarian, but his real purpose obvious to anyone who knows him. The man who trained Anakin from childhood, who fought beside him through countless battles, cannot simply accept that their relationship has ended in permanent estrangement. The reunion takes place in a crystal cave system beneath the planet's surface, away from the prying sensors and recording devices that have made privacy impossible anywhere on the war-torn world. Both men approach the meeting with visible tension, their hands instinctively positioned near their lightsaber hilts despite years of trust and friendship. "You don't have to do this, Anakin," Obi-Wan says without preamble, his voice heavy with exhaustion and sorrow. "Come back to us. The Council will find another way. Some compromise that doesn't require you to abandon everything you've worked for." Anakin's expression is sad but resolute, his blue eyes reflecting the rainbow patterns of light filtered through the crystal walls. The young man who once sought his master's approval for every decision is gone, replaced by someone who has found his own moral center and refuses to compromise it for the sake of institutional harmony. "No, they won't, Master," he replies quietly. "You know that, as well as I do. How many more innocent people will suffer while they debate the finer points of orthodoxy? How many more clone troopers will die following orders that prioritize doctrine over tactical sense? They talk for hours, their conversation ranging over years of shared experience and divergent philosophy. Obi-Wan speaks of tradition, of the accumulated wisdom of thousands of years of Jedi service, of the dangers inherent in abandoning proven methods for untested alternatives. Anakin counters with examples of institutional blindness, of opportunities missed because of rigid adherence to protocol, of suffering that could have been prevented if the Order had been willing to adapt to changing circumstances. Their lightsabers never ignite, but the emotional intensity of their debate creates its own kind of combat. Each argument is parried with counterexamples, each appeal to authority met with challenges to the legitimacy of that authority. They are no longer master and student, but two adults with fundamentally different visions of what it means to serve the Force. "I taught you better than this," Obi-Wan says finally, his voice cracking with emotion as their discussion reaches its inevitable impasse. "Yes?" Anakin replies gently. "You taught me to think for myself, to question, to stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult. I'm doing exactly what you taught me, Master. The fact that it leads me away from the temple doesn't make it wrong." They part without reconciliation, but also without enmity, both men understanding that they are following their consciences toward different destinations. The war between their respective factions will continue, but their personal relationship has achieved a kind of closure that allows them to respect each other even while opposing each other's choices. The conflict escalates across dozens of worlds as both Republic factions struggle to maintain their war efforts against the Separatists while conducting an internal civil war that drains resources and manpower from the primary conflict. Each battle becomes a three-way struggle for dominance, with Separatist forces often exploiting the chaos to claim strategic victories, while Republic forces tear each other apart. On Ryloth, the ancient Twi'lek freedom fighter Chum Syndulla finds his resistance movement split down the middle as different cells choose to support either traditional or reformed Jedi factions. The underground caverns that once served as unified staging areas for liberation operations now echo with heated debates about loyalty and principle. "General Secura has fought beside us for 2 years," argues Commander Gobi, his leku twitching with agitation as he addresses a gathering of resistance leaders. "She's bled for our freedom, lost friends defending our villages. How can we abandon her now? Because some council on Coruscant disapproves of her choices." But Captain Hauser, recently arrived with reinforcements from the reformed movement, shakes his head grimly. "Loyalty to individuals isn't the same as loyalty to principles. If the traditional order has become corrupt, then supporting it makes us complicit in that corruption, no matter how much we respect General Secura personally." The debate splits families and friendships that have endured generations of imperial occupation. Villages that once stood united against their oppressors now find themselves choosing sides in a conflict they barely understand. Their decision often based more on personal relationships with individual Jedi than on any deep philosophical conviction. When the fighting finally comes to Ryloth's capital city of Lesu, it takes the form of urban warfare that devastates neighborhoods already scarred by years of separatist bombardment. Master Ayla Secura leads traditional forces through the twisting streets with tactical precision born of intimate familiarity with the terrain, while Knight Bultar Swan coordinates reformed troops from positions in the ancient temple complexes that crown the city's highest peaks. The battle becomes a deadly game of cat and mouse through ruined buildings and collapsed tunnels, with both sides trying to minimize civilian casualties while gaining strategic advantage. Ayla's blue lightsaber flashes in the smoke-filled air as she deflects blaster bolts fired by clone troopers who once served under her command. Each exchange of fire, a betrayal of bonds forged in countless previous battles. "General, please!" shouts Commander Bly, his voice cracking with emotion as he aims his rifle at the woman who has saved his life more times than he can count. "Don't make us do this! Stand down and we can work something out." But Ayla's expression remains resolute, her connection to the Force allowing her to sense the pain behind his words, while understanding that some principles are worth fighting for, even against friends. "I'm sorry, Bly, but some orders can't be followed. No matter who gives them, their confrontation ends not in violence, but in mutual withdrawal, as separatist forces launch a surprise assault on both factions, forcing former allies to cooperate against their common enemy." The sight of Republic forces working together despite their ideological differences provides a glimpse of what might be possible if they could overcome their institutional conflicts. Naboo's government splits along even more complex lines, with Queen Jamilia attempting to maintain official neutrality, while various factions within the Royal Advisory Council and elected assembly choose sides based on their own political calculations. The peaceful world that has long prided itself on diplomatic solutions finds itself hosting secret meetings and clandestine operations that threaten to shatter its carefully maintained stability. In the Lake Country, where Anakin and Padme once found refuge from their public responsibilities, traditional Jedi establish a training camp for young Padawans relocated from Coruscant for their safety. The pastoral setting, with its rolling hills and crystal-clear waters, seems incongruous with the military preparations taking place among the scattered retreats and meditation gardens. Master Ki-Adi-Mundi oversees the youngling's education with the patience and wisdom that has made him legendary among his peers. But even his calm demeanor shows strain as he tries to explain concepts of loyalty and duty to children who have seen their own teachers choosing different sides in an incomprehensible conflict. "Master," asks a young human girl whose parents were killed in a separatist bombing raid, "if both sides are still Jedi, how do we know which one is right?" The question cuts to the heart of the crisis facing the Order. Ki-Adi-Mundi kneels beside the child, his elongated features softening with compassion as he searches for words that might provide guidance without adding to her confusion. "Truth isn't always simple, young one," he says finally. "Sometimes good people disagree about important things. And when that happens, we have to trust our own connection to the Force to guide us toward what's right. The important thing is to never let anger or fear make our choices for us." Meanwhile, on the other side of the planet, reformed Jedi establish their own facilities in the bustling port city of Karen, where the presence of diverse off-world populations provides a more cosmopolitan environment for training that emphasizes cultural understanding and social engagement rather than monastic isolation. Ahsoka leads classes that take young Force sensitives into the city's markets and community centers, teaching them to use their abilities in service to ordinary citizens rather than as tools of political power. Her approach emphasizes practical application of Force techniques for healing, construction, and conflict resolution rather than combat training. The Force doesn't belong to us, she explains to a mixed group of human and alien students as they help distribute food supplies to refugee families displaced by the war. We're just temporary custodians of abilities that should serve everyone, not just those with lightsabers and fancy titles. The contrast between the two approaches becomes a microcosm of the larger philosophical divide splitting the Order. Traditional Jedi maintain that proper training requires separation from worldly concerns to achieve the detachment necessary for wisdom, while Reformers argue that engagement with ordinary life is essential for understanding what they're supposed to protect. On Kamino, the conflict over clone production facilities becomes a crucial battleground that will determine the future composition of the Grand Army of the Republic. The sterile corridors and training facilities that once represented hope for Republic victory now echo with the sounds of civil war as competing factions attempt to influence the loyalty of both existing troops and future generations. Alpha-class ARC Trooper Captain Fordo represents the old guard of clone leadership, his scarred features and decisive manner reflecting years of absolute loyalty to Jedi command structure. Standing before an assembly of clone commanders in Tipoca City's main briefing amphitheater, he addresses concerns about divided loyalties with the blunt directness that has made him legendary among his brothers. Orders are orders, he states, his voice carrying the authority of someone who has never questioned the hierarchy that created him. We weren't bred to pick and choose which directives we follow based on personal feelings or political preferences. Our duty is to the Republic, and the Republic's legitimate authority flows through the established chain of command. But Captain Rex, his own reputation earned through years of battlefield innovation and genuine care for his troops' welfare, offers a different perspective from the same podium. His helmet rests on the speaking stand between them, a symbol of the choice between anonymous obedience and individual responsibility that every clone must make. Brothers, he begins, his voice quieter than Fordo's, but carrying equal conviction. We were created to serve, but service without choice is just another form of slavery. We've seen what blind obedience can lead to, how good soldiers can be used for evil purposes when they don't question their orders. The debate that follows reveals fault lines within clone society that mirror the larger conflict tearing apart the Republic. Older commanders who remember the early days of the war tend to support traditional authority structures, while younger troops who have served directly under Anakin and other reformed Jedi express greater willingness to follow their personal loyalties rather than institutional protocols. Commander Cody, his orange-marked armor bearing the scars of dozens of battles, speaks with the measured tone of someone trying to find middle ground in an increasingly polarized situation. Maybe the real question isn't which side we choose, but whether we're fighting for the right reasons. I've served under both traditional and reformed Jedi, and I've seen good and bad leaders in both camps. The discussion continues for hours, touching on fundamental questions about autonomy, loyalty, and the nature of military service that have implications far beyond the immediate crisis. Some clones argue for complete independence from Jedi oversight, proposing that the Grand Army operate under direct Senate control, rather than through force-sensitive intermediaries whose philosophical disputes have compromised their effectiveness. Others maintain that their genetic conditioning makes them unsuited for autonomous decision-making, that their greatest strength lies in their ability to follow orders without hesitation or doubt. The debate reveals the psychological complexity of beings created for a specific purpose who are now being asked to define their own identities and loyalties. Training facilities throughout Camino become contested territories where different factions attempt to influence the development of new clone cadets. Traditional Jedi emphasize discipline, hierarchy, and unquestioning obedience to legitimate authority, while reformed teachers focus on critical thinking, individual initiative, and the importance of moral reasoning in military decision-making. The differences in approach become apparent during combat simulations, where traditional trained clones execute orders with mechanical precision, while reform-trained troops show greater tactical flexibility, but also higher rates of questioning directives that seem ethically questionable. Both approaches have advantages and disadvantages that reflect the larger tensions within Republic military doctrine. The emotional toll of the Civil War becomes most apparent during personal confrontations between former allies who now find themselves on opposite sides of an ideological divide. Master Luminara Unduli's encounter with her former Padawan, Barriss, on the red dust plains of Geonosis, represents the tragic cost of institutional conflict on individual relationships. The arena where the Clone Wars began provides a grimly appropriate setting for their confrontation, its sand-covered floor still stained with the blood of countless beings who have died in the name of competing visions of galactic order. Ancient stone walls bear scorch marks from lightsaber duels and blaster battles, while overhead, the twin suns of the Geonosian system cast harsh shadows that emphasize the stark choices facing every participant in the conflict. Luminara approaches the meeting with visible reluctance, her usually immaculate robes replaced by practical combat gear that shows the wear and tear of months of continuous warfare. The elegant bearing that once marked her as one of the Order's most accomplished diplomats has been tempered by experiences that have tested every assumption she held about duty, loyalty, and the nature of wisdom. "You don't have to follow him into darkness, Barriss," she pleads as they face each other across the arena's central space, their lightsabers igniting with sounds that echo off the ancient stones. "Come back to me. Come back to the light." But Barriss shakes her head sadly, her young face showing a weariness that belongs to someone decades older. The idealistic Padawan who once hung on her master's every word has been replaced by a young woman who has seen too much suffering and made too many compromises to accept simple answers to complex questions. "The light you're talking about is just another kind of darkness, Master," she replies, her voice heavy with sorrow rather than anger. "The darkness of willful blindness, of choosing comfort over truth. Anakin didn't lead me away from the light. He helped me see that the Council has been hiding it from us all along." Their duel that follows is a masterpiece of conflicted emotion translated into physical combat. Each strike carries the weight of years of shared experience. Every parry, a response not just to immediate threat, but to accumulated disappointment and philosophical disagreement. Luminara's form is classical and precise, each movement reflecting decades of traditional training and adherence to established technique. Barriss fights with passionate intensity, tempered by tactical awareness learned through months of actual combat rather than temple exercises. Her style incorporates elements that would have been forbidden in her Padawan training. Force. Enhanced emotional projection designed to unbalance opponents. Aggressive sequences that prioritize victory over aesthetic perfection. Defensive patterns that sacrifice elegance for effectiveness. "You were my teacher," Barriss says as their blades lock in the center of the arena, bringing them face to face across a barrier of crackling energy. "You taught me to question, to think for myself, to serve justice rather than authority. How can you ask me to abandon those lessons now? Because I also taught you wisdom," Luminara replies, her voice strained with the effort of maintaining the blade lock while wrestling with her own doubts. And wisdom sometimes means accepting that we don't have all the answers, that institutions exist for reasons beyond our personal understanding. Their confrontation ends not in decisive victory for either side, but in mutual exhaustion and the arrival of separatist forces that force both women to withdraw from their personal conflict to address a more immediate threat. But the symbolic weight of master fighting student, of bonds that should unite the order being severed by ideological conflict, resonates across the galaxy and hardens the positions of both factions. Similar scenes play out on dozens of worlds as former friends and allies find themselves choosing between personal loyalty and institutional obligation. The psychological toll of civil war proves as devastating as its material costs, leaving scars on the souls of participants that will take generations to heal. The intervention of the Separatist Confederacy in the Jedi Civil War comes gradually at first, then with overwhelming force, as Count Dooku recognizes the unprecedented opportunity presented by Republic forces divided against themselves. His strategic mind, sharpened by decades of political maneuvering and military training, immediately grasps the potential for achieving total victory, while his enemies exhaust themselves fighting each other. Standing in the command center of his flagship Invisible Hand, as it emerges from hyperspace above the contested world of Renvar, Dooku studies tactical displays showing Republic forces engaged in 3 separate battles across the planet's frozen surface. Traditional Jedi hold the ancient ruins of the Sith Academy. Reformed troops control the orbital platforms, and his own droid armies are preparing to assault both positions simultaneously. "General Grievous," he commands, his cultured voice carrying easily over the bridge's electronic hum. "Deploy your forces to maximum effect." The Jedi are so busy fighting each other that they've forgotten to watch for external threats. We shall remind them of their folly. The cyborg general's mechanical laugh echoes through the command center as he reviews attack vectors on his personal displays. "It will be my pleasure, Count. These self-righteous fools have made our victory inevitable through their own arrogance and division." But Dooku's satisfaction is tempered by reports from his intelligence networks, suggesting that the Republic's civil war may not be entirely organic in its development. Certain patterns in the conflict's escalation, specific triggers that have pushed moderate voices toward extremism, suggest manipulation by a third party whose agenda remains unclear. The industrial world of Foundry becomes the stage for the largest and most complex battle of the Civil War, a massive 3-way confrontation that will determine the balance of power for the remainder of the conflict. The planet's automated manufacturing systems have been producing weapons and equipment for all sides, making its control essential for any faction hoping to achieve ultimate victory. Foundry's surface is a maze of interconnected facilities stretching across multiple continents where massive assembly lines continue their inexorable production even as battle rages around them. The sound of industrial machinery mingles with blaster fire and lightsaber clashes, creating a cacophony that seems to embody the chaos of galactic civilization at war with itself. General Grievous leads the Separatist assault with mechanical precision that reflects his cybernetic nature and tactical programming. His four-armed lightsaber technique has evolved during months of combat against divided Jedi opponents, incorporating elements designed specifically to exploit the hesitation and distraction caused by their internal conflicts. The cyborg general's modified body allows him to fight with inhuman endurance and speed, his multiple limbs weaving complex patterns of attack that would be impossible for organic beings to execute or counter. His collection of Jedi lightsabers, each trophy representing a fallen opponent, reflects his growing confidence in his ability to exploit the Republic's weakness. "Come then, Jedi," he calls across the factory floor as traditional and reformed forces advance on his position from opposite directions. "Show me how your precious philosophies serve you in battle. Let us see if your divisions make you stronger or weaker when facing a united enemy." Master Mace Windu coordinates the traditional assault with the tactical brilliance that has made him legendary among Republic commanders, his forces moving through the industrial complex with disciplined precision that reflects years of orthodox training and hierarchical command structure. His purple lightsaber cuts through battle droids with mechanical efficiency, while his tactical awareness allows him to coordinate multiple units across vast distances. But the presence of reformed forces complicates every decision, forcing him to account for allies who might become enemies and enemies who might become allies, depending on the evolving tactical situation. The fluid nature of three-way combat requires adaptability that challenges even his considerable strategic abilities. Anakin commands the reformed assault with passionate intensity that turns his troops into a devastating offensive force, their morale enhanced by personal loyalty to a leader who has never asked them to sacrifice for causes he wouldn't die for himself. His innovative tactics, developed through years of Clone Wars experience, allow him to exploit weaknesses in both traditional Republic doctrine and separatist automation. "Remember what we're fighting for," he calls to his troops as they advance through smoke-filled corridors lined with humming machinery. Not for political power or institutional pride, but for the right to serve the Force according to our consciences rather than someone else's interpretation of ancient texts. The battle rages across Foundry's industrial landscape for 3 days and nights, with control of different facilities changing hands multiple times. As the three-way conflict develops its own complex rhythm, manufacturing centers become fortresses, assembly lines serve as highways for rapid troop movement, and the massive industrial machinery provides both cover and hazards that add unpredictable elements to tactical planning. During a brief lull in the fighting, Anakin and Mace find themselves fighting side by side against a combined assault of destroyer droids and super battle droids, their personal animosity temporarily set aside in the face of immediate threats to both their forces. Their lightsabers move in unconscious synchronization, blue and purple blades, creating a deadly barrier against mechanical opponents whose programming cannot account for such seamless cooperation. "We make a good team," Anakin observes during the brief respite between waves of attackers, his blade cutting through a droid's central processor with surgical precision, while Mace's Varpard technique deflects blaster bolts back toward their sources. "We always did," Mace replies, and for a moment, the old respect between them resurfaces above the layers of institutional conflict and personal resentment. Perhaps that's what makes this civil war so tragic. We're wasting our strengths, fighting each other, while our real enemies grows stronger. But their moment of cooperation is interrupted by the discovery of something that changes the entire nature of their conflict. As they advance through Foundry's central command complex, cutting through the facility's automated defenses, they uncover research laboratories that have been conducting experiments whose scope and horror dwarf anything they had imagined. The detention levels beneath the complex contain dozens of holding cells where captured Jedi from both factions are being subjected to medical procedures whose purpose becomes clear only when they access the facility's research databases. Separatist scientists have been extracting blood samples, conducting neural mapping procedures, and performing tissue biopsies on prisoners who show no signs of physical restraint despite their obvious incapacitation. Master Reeth Koth hangs unconscious in a containment field. His normally dignified features slack with the effects of prolonged sedation, while monitoring devices track his biological responses to various stimuli. Beside him, Knight Baltar Swan shows similar signs of medical manipulation. Her breathing shallow and irregular, in ways that suggest pharmaceutical intervention rather than natural sleep. Even some Padawans are among the prisoners, young beings who couldn't have been older than Ahsoka when she left the temple, their faces bearing the innocent trust that has been perverted into helpless vulnerability. The sight galvanizes both traditional and reformed forces in ways that political speeches and philosophical debates never could. This is what our division has brought us. Ahsoka's voice crackles over the comm system as she reports their discovery to all Republic forces on the planet. While we fight each other over doctrinal purity, our real enemies prey on all of us without discrimination. We need to remember who we truly are and what we're supposed to be fighting for. The rescue operation that follows becomes a model for the cooperation that might be possible if both factions could set aside their differences long enough to focus on their common enemies. Traditional and reformed Jedi work in perfect synchronization, their combined force abilities allowing them to overcome separatist defenses that would have been insurmountable for either group alone. Master Windu's tactical expertise combines with Anakin's innovative approaches to create assault plans that maximize their strengths while minimizing exposure to the complex's automated defenses. Clone troopers from both factions coordinate their advances with professional efficiency that transcends their commanders' political disagreements, their shared commitment to rescuing captured comrades overriding institutional loyalties. But the research data they recovered during the operation reveals disturbing patterns that extend far beyond simple medical experimentation. Encrypted files contain communications between high-ranking officials in both the Republic and Confederacy, suggesting coordination and planning that goes far beyond normal intelligence gathering or prisoner exchange negotiations. Financial records show Republic credits being transferred to Confederate accounts through shell corporations and dummy organizations whose ownership traces back to individuals with connections to both governments. Military strategy documents reveal separatist battle plans being leaked to Republic forces at precisely the moments when such intelligence would cause maximum disruption to traditional Jedi operations. Most damaging of all, psychological profiles and behavior modification protocols suggest that key figures on both sides of the Civil War have been subjected to subtle influence campaigns designed to exaggerate their existing disagreements and push them toward irreconcilable conflict. The divisions that have torn the galaxy apart were not organic results of philosophical differences, but manufactured crises designed to weaken the Republic from within. Master Quinlan Vos, his intelligence background and years of undercover work giving him insights that more conventional Jedi lack, pieces together the conspiracy's scope with growing horror. Standing among the ruins of the research facility while medics tend to rescued prisoners, he assembles fragments of data that paint a picture of systematic manipulation extending back to the war's earliest days. "This isn't random," he announces to the assembled commanders, his scarred features grim with the weight of revelation. "The timing of our civil war, the escalation of separatist attacks, even some of the specific triggers that led to our factional divide, it's all too convenient, too perfectly orchestrated, to be coincidental." The investigation that follows involves intelligence operatives from both factions working together to trace financial networks, decode encrypted communications, and analyze behavioral data that spans multiple years of galactic conflict. The picture that emerges is of a conspiracy so vast and sophisticated that it dwarfs the open warfare that has consumed the galaxy's attention. Hidden bank accounts on neutral worlds contain billions of credits flowing between Republic and Confederate sources through intermediary organizations whose ultimate ownership remains carefully obscured. Communication intercepts reveal coded messages discussing asset management and behavioral modification protocols in language that suggests systematic manipulation of key individuals on both sides of the Amendos. Conflict, psychological analysis software, originally developed for military intelligence purposes, identifies patterns in public statements and private communications that indicate external influence on decision-making processes. The civil war that has torn the Jedi Order apart shows clear signs of artificial amplification, with moderate voices being systematically marginalized while extremist positions receive unexpected support and resources. The scope of the manipulation becomes clear when they trace the conspiracy's financial networks back to their ultimate source. Shell corporations and dummy organizations, when analyzed through multiple layers of ownership transfers and legal obfuscation, all lead to the same destination: accounts controlled by the Office of the Supreme Chancellor of the Republic, Master Obi-Wan Kenobi. His investigative skills, honed by years of tracking separatist networks and unraveling criminal conspiracies, presents the evidence to a joint assembly of both Jedi factions on the neutral world of Alderaan. The Great Hall where they meet has hosted diplomatic negotiations for centuries, but never has it witnessed such a gathering of Force users united by shared revelation rather than common purpose. The holographic displays surrounding the assembly show financial flowcharts, communication networks, and behavioral analysis reports that collectively paint a picture of systematic betrayal at the highest levels of Republic government. The evidence is overwhelming and undeniable, but its implications are so staggering that many of the assembled Jedi struggle to accept what they're seeing. The dark side has clouded our vision, Obi-Wan announces, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber despite its quiet tone. But not in the way we thought. We have been blind not to our own failings, but to the enemy working among us. Chancellor Palpatine is not the benevolent leader we believed him to be. He pauses, letting the weight of his words settle over the assembly before delivering the revelation that will reshape their understanding of everything they thought they knew about their conflict. He is Darth Sidious, the Sith Lord we have been seeking. The announcement hits the assembled Jedi like a thermal detonator detonating in an enclosed space. Shocked murmurs ripple through the gathering as the implications sink in. The kindly politician who has led the Republic through its darkest hour, who has expressed such concern for their welfare and such support for their mission, stands revealed as the architect of their suffering and the puppet master behind their enemy's success. Master Yoda, his ancient features heavy with the weight of accumulated wisdom and recent failure, rises slowly from his position at the assembly's center. His 900-year-old eyes reflect not just sorrow, but a deep shame at having been deceived so completely by an enemy who operated under his very nose for years. Clouded our vision has been, he admits, his voice carrying the pain of someone forced to confront his own fallibility after centuries of assumed wisdom. But not by the dark side alone. Blinded by our own certainty, we were. Failed to see that manipulated our divisions were by those who would profit from our conflict. The revelation reframes everything that has happened since Anakin's initial confrontation with the Council. His rebellion against Jedi orthodoxy, while genuine in its motivation and justified in its concerns, was amplified and exploited by forces that cared nothing for his principles, but saw his dissent as a useful tool for achieving their own goals. But there's a crucial difference in this timeline from what might have been in another universe. Unlike a scenario where Anakin might have fallen to the dark side and become Palpatine's apprentice, his rebellion was born of genuine conviction rather than Sith corruption. When the truth about his former mentor is revealed, he doesn't hesitate to join the unified Jedi movement against their true enemy. "I should have seen it," Anakin says, his voice heavy with self-recrimination as he studies holographic displays showing years of subtle manipulation and systematic deception. He was always so supportive, so understanding of my frustrations with the Council. I thought he was just a friend who cared about my welfare. Ahsoka places a comforting hand on his shoulder, her touch carrying the warmth of their restored master-student relationship and the wisdom gained through her own experiences with institutional betrayal. He fooled all of us, Sky Guy. That's what made him so dangerous. He told each of us exactly what we wanted to hear, while working to destroy everything we cared about. The planning for their assault on Palpatine's regime begins immediately, with traditional and reformed Jedi working together in ways that demonstrate how effective their cooperation could have been if they hadn't been manipulated into conflict. Strategic committees form naturally across factional lines, with expertise rather than ideology determining leadership roles. Master Mace, Windu, and Anakin find themselves coordinating military operations with an efficiency that reminds everyone of their legendary partnership during the war's early phases. Their tactical brilliance, when focused on a common enemy rather than divided by institutional politics, proves devastating to separatist forces attempting to exploit the Revelation's chaos. Senator Padme Amidala, her political expertise crucial to the success of any effort to remove Palpatine through legal means, works with Bail Organa and Mon Mothma to build a coalition of senators willing to support emergency measures against their own chancellor. The constitutional crisis that will inevitably follow Palpatine's removal requires careful planning to ensure that the Republic's democratic institutions can survive the transition. "We have to be very careful about how we do this," Padme warns during a clandestine meeting in her Coruscant apartment, the same space where she and Anakin once found refuge from their public responsibilities. "If we simply remove Palpatine without addressing the underlying problems that allowed him to gain so much power, we'll just be setting the stage for the next would-be dictator." The apartment's elegant furnishings and sweeping views of Coruscant's cityscape provide a stark contrast to the gravity of their discussion. Around the polished conference table, representatives from both Jedi factions join with senators from across the political spectrum to plan what amounts to a complete overthrow of the existing government structure. Bail Organa, his dignified bearing reflecting years of principled leadership in the Senate, addresses the group with characteristic directness. The emergency powers we granted Palpatine in good faith have been perverted into instruments of tyranny. We need to not only remove him from office, but dismantle the entire framework that allowed such concentration of authority. Mon Mothma nods in agreement, her analytical mind already working through the constitutional implications of their planned action. We'll need to act quickly and decisively once we begin. Palpatine's supporters in the Senate won't hesitate to use legal challenges and procedural delays to protect their positions. The irony is not lost on anyone. The civil war that was supposed to destroy the Republic's unity has instead revealed the true threat to its survival and forced its defenders to work together in ways they never could have imagined. Traditional Jedi, who once insisted on working within established authority structures, now plan revolutionary action, while reformed rebels find themselves coordinating with the very institutions they previously opposed. Captain Rex, representing the clone forces that will be crucial to any successful operation against Palpatine, brings military expertise earned through years of battlefield experience. His analysis of likely opposition forces and potential tactical challenges helps shape plans that account for both conventional security measures and the possibility of Sith powers being used defensively. The Chancellor has always kept clone guards around him, Rex observes, studying architectural plans of the Senate building and executive offices. But we don't know how many of them might be programmed with special protocols we're not aware of. We'll need to be prepared for anything. The mention of programming sends a chill through the assembled planners, reminding them of how thoroughly Palpatine has infiltrated and corrupted the Republic's institutions. If he could manipulate the Jedi into civil war, what other preparations might he have made for defending his position? Commander Cody, his orange-marked armor bearing the scars of dozens of battles, raises concerns about the broader implications of their planned action. Once we move against the Chancellor, there's no going back. Every clone unit, every Republic installation, every citizen in the galaxy will have to choose sides. Are we ready for that kind of chaos? The question hangs heavy in the air, forcing everyone to confront the magnitude of what they're planning. This isn't just about removing a corrupt politician, but about fundamentally restructuring galactic civilization in the middle of an ongoing war against external enemies. Anakin speaks with quiet conviction that reflects his journey from institutional rebel to reluctant revolutionary. The chaos is already here. Palpatine created it, nurtured it, used it to gain power over all of us. The only way to end it is to remove its source and build something better from what remains. The final assault plan that emerges from their deliberations is complex and multifaceted, requiring precise coordination between military forces, political operatives, and intelligence networks across multiple worlds. The operation will begin with simultaneous strikes on separatist command centers to prevent them from exploiting the chaos, followed by coordinated political and military action to isolate Palpatine and his supporters. The timing is crucial. They must act during a scheduled Senate session, when Palpatine will be publicly visible and politically vulnerable. But before he can implement whatever contingency plans he undoubtedly has prepared for such a scenario, the window of opportunity is narrow, and failure will likely result in the complete destruction of everything they're fighting to preserve. As the final preparations begin, representatives from both Jedi factions gather for what amounts to a formal reconciliation ceremony in the ruins of the old Jedi Temple's council chamber. The room where their civil war began with its broken furniture and scarred walls, serves as a powerful reminder of how completely they allowed themselves to be manipulated by their enemy. Master Yoda, standing in the center of the circle where he once pronounced judgment on Anakin's marriage, addresses the assembled Jedi with humility that comes from confronting his own fallibility. Learn much, we have, about the price of certainty. Divided we were by our own pride and fear. United now, we must be by our commitment to something greater than ourselves. The ceremony that follows blends elements from both traditional and reformed practices, creating something new that honors the past while acknowledging the need for change. Lightsabers are relit not in combat but in commitment to a shared future, their colored beams intersecting in patterns that symbolize unity through diversity rather than conformity through suppression. But even as they prepare for their greatest challenge, troubling reports arrive from across the galaxy, suggesting that Palpatine is already implementing countermeasures. Clone units begin receiving new orders that seem designed to test their loyalty, while Senate sessions become increasingly dominated by discussions of expanded emergency powers and internal security measures. The final confrontation begins not with dramatic lightsaber duels, but with a seemingly routine Senate session called to address the growing threat of Jedi insurrection against Republic stability. Palpatine, his public persona still carefully maintained, addresses the assembled senators with grave concern about reports of Force users plotting against legitimate government authority. My fellow citizens, he intones from the Supreme Chancellor's podium, his voice carrying across the vast chamber with practiced authority. We face a crisis unlike any in our Republic's history. The very guardians we trusted to protect our democracy have turned against it, their ancient powers corrupted by pride and ambition. The chamber buzzes with tension as senators from hundreds of worlds try to process the implications of what they're hearing. Many have received private briefings about evidence of Palpatine's corruption, but others remain loyal to the leader who has guided them through years of devastating war. Senator Orn Freetar of Ryloth, his blue skin flushed with indignation, rises to speak in support of expanded Chancellor powers. The Twi'lek people have suffered greatly from Jedi incompetence and division. If stronger leadership is needed to restore order, then we must provide it, regardless of traditional limitations. But Senator Bail Organa immediately counters with evidence that has been carefully prepared for this moment. With respect to my colleague from Ryloth, the evidence suggests that our problems stem not from Jedi incompetence, but from systematic manipulation by those who would benefit from chaos and division. The debate that erupts reveals the careful preparation that has gone into this moment. Senators who support the unified Jedi movement present financial records, communication intercepts, and intelligence analysis that collectively demonstrate a pattern of deception extending back to the war's earliest days. Holographic displays throughout the chamber show the flow of credits between Republic and Confederate accounts, the timing of military intelligence leaks, and the systematic manipulation of public opinion through carefully orchestrated media campaigns. The evidence is overwhelming, but Palpatine's supporters attempt to dismiss it as fabricated propaganda designed to undermine legitimate authority. As the session continues, it becomes clear that the Senate is as divided as the Republic itself, with core worlds generally supporting Palpatine while Rim territories and former separatist sympathizers rally behind the evidence of corruption. The vote on expanded emergency powers becomes a referendum on the future of democratic governance itself. But as the roll call proceeds, and it becomes apparent that the motion will fail, Palpatine's carefully maintained facade finally begins to crack. His kindly expressions give way to flashes of anger and frustration, while his speeches take on increasingly authoritarian themes that alarm even some of his supporters. Senator Mon Mothma rises to present formal charges of treason against the Chancellor, her voice calm but firm as she outlines evidence of collaboration with enemy forces and systematic betrayal of public trust. The office of Supreme Chancellor was created to serve the Republic's citizens in times of crisis. It was never intended to become a throne for those who would sacrifice democracy for personal power. The moment when Palpatine's mask finally falls completely is captured by hundreds of recording devices and broadcast across the galaxy in real time. The transformation from beloved leader to revealed monster shocks billions of beings who had trusted him with their lives and freedom. "You fools," he snarls, his voice echoing with Sith power as the last pretense of civility disappears. "Did you really think your pathetic democracy could stand against the power of the dark side? Your debates, your votes, your precious procedures, all meaningless in the face of true strength." Force lightning erupts from his fingertips, striking down senators who had been preparing to vote against him. The ancient chamber fills with screams and the smell of ozone, as raw dark side energy courses through the air, shattering the illusion of civilized discourse that has defined Republic governance for 1,000 years. "I am the Senate," Palpatine declares, his yellow eyes blazing with malevolent power, as more lightning lances out to strike his opponents. "I am the Republic. I am your Emperor, and you will bow before my might, or be destroyed." But even as chaos erupts in the Senate chamber, the coordinated response that has been months in the planning begins to unfold. Jedi from both factions pour into the building from every entrance, their lightsabers ignited and ready for the battle that will determine the galaxy's future. Master Mace Windu leads the traditional forces through the main corridors with tactical precision that reflects decades of military experience, while Anakin coordinates reformed troops through service passages and maintenance areas that allow them to approach from unexpected directions. Their coordination is seamless, demonstrating the devastating effectiveness they could have achieved throughout the war if they hadn't been manipulated into conflict. Clone troopers loyal to the unified movement provide covering fire and secure escape routes for civilian senators while engaging Palpatine's personal guard forces. But these are not the programmed killers of another timeline's Order 66. Instead, they are soldiers whose loyalty has been earned through personal relationships rather than genetic conditioning. Captain Rex coordinates the military operation from a command post established in the Senate Building's Security Center, his tactical displays showing friendly forces advancing through the complex, while emergency evacuation procedures clear civilians from potential combat zones. All units, remember your objectives. We're here to preserve the Republic, not destroy it. The battle that rages through the Senate complex becomes a running fight through corridors lined with statues of Republic heroes and chambers where democracy has been practiced for centuries. The symbolic weight of their struggle is not lost on anyone. They are literally fighting for the soul of galactic civilization in the halls where it has been nurtured and protected for generations. But the real confrontation comes when Mace Windu and Anakin finally corner Palpatine in the Supreme Chancellor's office, their earlier animosity completely forgotten in the face of their shared commitment to ending his reign of deception. The Sith Lord's mastery of the dark side is formidable, but he cannot overcome their combined strength when it's focused on a common goal rather than divided by factional conflict. So the prodigal apprentice returns. Palpatine sneers as he faces the two Jedi across his ornate office, his yellow eyes reflecting the malevolent power that courses through his twisted form, and brings with him the Council's attack dog. How touching that you've overcome your differences to face me together. The boy was never yours to corrupt, Mace declares, his purple lightsaber humming with controlled fury as he advances on the Sith Lord. And neither was the Republic you've tried to steal from its people. And I was never your apprentice, Anakin adds, his blue blade joining Mace's in a coordinated assault that forces Palpatine to defend from multiple angles simultaneously. I was just another tool you tried to use for your own purposes. Their duel is epic in scope but deeply personal in its stakes, representing not just a battle between light and dark, but between competing visions of what galactic civilization should become. Palpatine fights with the desperate fury of someone whose carefully laid plans are crumbling around him, while his opponents draw strength from their hard-won unity and shared commitment to justice. The office that has served as the seat of Republic power for centuries becomes a battleground where centuries of accumulated artifacts and symbols of democratic governance are destroyed by the violent energies unleashed by their conflict. Ancient statues shatter under Force impacts. Priceless artwork burns from lightsaber strikes, and the very foundations of the building shake from the power being channeled by the combatants. But ultimately, Palpatine's greatest weapon has always been division, and faced with truly unified opposition, his power begins to wane. When his lightning attack threatens to overwhelm Mace's defenses, Anakin steps forward to absorb the energy with his mechanical hand, the cybernetic components channeling the electrical discharge harmlessly into the building's power grid. Your time is over, Mace declares as their combined assault finally breaks through Palpatine's defenses. His Varpad technique, feeding on the Sith Lord's hatred and turning it back against its source. The Emperor's death comes not with dramatic speeches or final revelations, but with a simple acknowledgement of defeat as their lightsabers find their mark. His body crumples to the ornate carpet of his office, the yellow light fading from his eyes as the dark side energies that sustained him dissipate into nothingness. But even as they stand over their fallen enemy, both Jedi understand that their victory represents only the beginning of the challenges they face. The immediate crisis has been resolved, but the underlying problems that allowed Palpatine to gain power remain to be addressed through careful reconstruction of damaged institutions and restoration of public trust. The aftermath of Palpatine's death unfolds across multiple timelines as the galaxy struggles to process the revelation that their trusted leader was the architect of their suffering. Emergency sessions convene in legislative bodies across hundreds of worlds, while military commanders grapple with the sudden absence of the authority structure that has defined their service. Senator Padme Amidala, working with a coalition of representatives from across the political spectrum, takes the lead in establishing interim governance structures designed to prevent any single individual from accumulating the kind of power Palpatine wielded. The constitutional reforms that emerge from their deliberations represent a fundamental shift toward distributed authority and democratic accountability. We cannot allow fear of chaos to drive us toward the same mistakes that enabled this crisis. She addresses the emergency Senate session convened to establish new governmental procedures. True security comes not from concentrating power in the hands of a few, but from ensuring that all voices can be heard and all interests can be represented. The Jedi Order itself undergoes equally fundamental changes, as representatives from both factions work to establish new codes of conduct and training procedures that incorporate lessons learned from their civil war. The rigid hierarchy and dogmatic adherence to ancient rules that characterize the traditional order gives way to a more flexible structure that encourages questioning and adaptation. Master Yoda, his ancient wisdom enriched by the painful lessons of recent conflict, speaks to assembled Jedi with humility that comes from confronting his own fallibility. Learned much, we have, about the dangers of certainty. Strong in the Force, we may be, but wise enough to question our own assumptions, we must become. The new Jedi code that emerges from their deliberations reflects this philosophy of growth and adaptation. Emotion, yet peace. Ignorance, yet knowledge. Passion, yet serenity. Chaos, yet harmony. Death, yet the Force. It acknowledges that Jedi are beings with feelings and attachments, while calling them to channel these aspects of themselves in service to others. Anakin and Ahsoka established their training academy on Naboo as originally planned. But now it serves as a model for Jedi education that emphasizes community engagement and practical service, rather than monastic isolation. Young Force sensitives learn not just combat techniques and meditation practices, but also skills needed to serve as healers, teachers, and community leaders. The Force doesn't belong to us. Anakin explains to a gathering of prospective students and their families, his marriage to Padme having become a symbol of the new order's acceptance of attachment and emotional connection. We're temporary custodians of abilities that should serve everyone, not just those with lightsabers and formal training. The integration of clone troopers into civilian society becomes one of the new Republic's greatest challenges and most significant achievements. Medical advances that halt their accelerated aging process are combined with educational programs that help them develop skills beyond military service, while legal reforms grant them full citizenship rights and recognition as individuals rather than property. Captain Rex's appointment to the Senate as the first clone representative marks a symbolic transformation in how the Republic views the relationship between created beings and their creators. His inaugural speech, delivered in the same chamber where Palpatine's regime fell, emphasizes the importance of choice over programming in defining individual identity. "We were made to serve," he tells the assembled senators, his voice carrying the authority of someone who has earned the right to speak for his people. But service without choice is just another form of slavery. The Republic we helped preserve must be worthy of the sacrifices made in its name. The Separatist Confederacy, deprived of Sith leadership and facing a reunified Republic committed to addressing legitimate grievances, gradually negotiates peace agreements that transform the nature of galactic governance. Rather than simple military conquest, the conflict's resolution involves fundamental reforms that address corporate influence, regional representation, and economic inequality. Count Dooku, captured during the final assault on a Confederate stronghold, undergoes a trial that becomes a model for transitional justice in the post-war galaxy. Rather than execution or simple imprisonment, he is required to make amends through testimony about Sith manipulation and public service designed to repair damage caused by the conflict. "I was a fool," he admits during his testimony, before a joint commission investigating war crimes and systematic deception. "Palpatine offered me power and the chance to remake the galaxy according to my vision of justice. I thought I was serving the greater good, but I was only serving his ambition and my own pride." The reconstruction efforts that follow focus not just on rebuilding destroyed infrastructure, but on creating new institutions designed to prevent future conflicts through improved communication, representation, and conflict resolution mechanisms. Trade disputes are resolved through arbitration rather than warfare, while regional grievances are addressed through expanded autonomy and resource sharing. Years later, when historians analyze the period known as the Jedi Civil War, they identify it not as a failure of democratic institutions, but as a necessary crisis that revealed hidden weaknesses and forced beneficial reforms. The recognition that even the most venerated organizations can become corrupt, that even the wisest leaders can fall prey to manipulation, becomes a cornerstone of civic education throughout the transformed republic. Children growing up in this reformed galaxy learn that questioning authority is not treachery, but civic responsibility. That loyalty to principles matters more than loyalty to institutions. That the price of freedom is eternal vigilance against those who would exploit good intentions for evil purposes. The Jedi who serve these communities are not distant guardians but neighbors and friends, their wisdom earned through shared struggle rather than inherited tradition. Obi-Wan and Anakin's partnership in establishing the new temple on Coruscant becomes a symbol of how former enemies can become stronger through reconciliation and mutual respect. Their friendship, tested by civil war and nearly broken by manipulation, emerges more resilient for having survived those trials. We almost lost everything. Obi-Wan reflects as they watch young Padawans training in techniques that blend traditional forms with innovative approaches developed during the conflict. Our pride, our certainty that we knew what was best, it nearly destroyed us all. But it didn't, Anakin replies, his arm around Padme as they observe their own children, playing among other younglings, no longer forced to hide their family bonds. We learned that strength comes not from rigid adherence to rules, but from the wisdom to adapt when circumstances change. The order that emerges from this crisis will be better than the one that entered it. The galaxy that emerges from the Jedi Civil War is not perfect, but it is more just, more representative, and more resilient than what came before. The institutions that govern it have been tested by crisis and reformed through struggle, while the beings who serve them have learned the value of humility, adaptation, and cooperation in the face of challenges that no single group can overcome alone. And perhaps most importantly, the young people who will inherit this galaxy have learned that change is possible, that corruption can be challenged, that even the most powerful institutions can be reformed when enough people commit themselves to justice and democratic values. The legacy of Anakin Skywalker's rebellion is not destruction but transformation, not the ending of old ways, but the beginning of something better. That's our theory. The Star Wars universe is a galaxy filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey to a galaxy far, far away, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.